What's up, friends and family? Welcome back to the podcast. It's your boy Mike, and today I'm going to be talking about finances, specifically money and money management. So, if you're someone who could take value from that, maybe you have goals that you've set for your financial self in the future, this is the video for you, right? To just learn a little bit, take some notes and tricks from my experience and my testimony, and go from there. One thing that's really important to share is the fact that I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not some sort of guru or anything like that. I'm really just sharing my experience, my testimony, some things that I've learned along the way to help me overcome some challenges. And it's actually been a challenge to film this video because I don't like talking about money, and like most people, my parents didn't talk about money growing up. So sharing a little bit about my financial status, my current place in life, and where I came from has been a challenge, but I'm just going with the flow and I'm sharing what I can with you. So if this video is something you think you could take value from, come along from the ride. Alright, so regarding my background, I was born and raised in Nigeria. Around age 5, my mom came to the US, and I was raised from 5 to 10 with my grandfather and some of my aunts and uncles. It really takes a village, right? And so after I got to the US, it was me, my little sister, and my mom who worked multiple jobs to put food on the table for us, and really did her best to make sure my sister and I were comfortable growing up. Shout out to her. And towards my high school, junior, senior year of high school, she fell in love with my stepdad, who I call my dad today. And they raised us from then on till now. And so that's a little bit of the background story of my upbringing. And now to kind of dive into my dad and my mom's relationship and their relationship with money and how that influenced me, we can start off by saying they didn't really talk about it, right? They didn't really talk about money. They didn't really talk about how to manage it, besides just save your money, don't spend money on stupid stuff, right? I had no idea what kind of money they were making with their jobs. I just know that there was always times where I'd ask for things and they'd be like, you gotta save up and buy that yourself. Or occasionally, if we're in the car together on the way home from church or something, and my sister and I want to eat out, they'll tell us there's food at home. So that's kind of like the background on that. I'm 31 years old and I work in technology, financial technology. And I make somewhere around 130 to 150K per year. It fluctuates because, the economy, sales, things like that. To kind of dive into some of the core principles that I think are important for people wherever you are in life, it's just how you perceive money and how you manage it, right? And how quickly it comes and goes out of your hands. And so, like I said, my parents didn't really talk and show us much in regards to their finances, but what we could see is that they were really, really generous. They were generous with what they had. They would always be willing to give, the first ones to raise their hands to help people in need, and that's something that stuck with me growing up. So I've always been someone who's felt like, it's someone's birthday, we're all out eating, that person's not paying for their meal, right? Just things like that, like just trying to be generous in certain ways. Sometimes it's intentional, sometimes it's reactive. Some examples of me being intentional about my generosity is that occasionally when we go grocery shopping or if I eat out, I'll get cash back or change that I'll leave in my car for the occasional times where there's someone on the road that might need help, or someone that I feel led to be generous to. And I occasionally give what I have. And so this is not even planned, but I feel like the Lord's telling me to share an example with you in regards to my experience with generosity and this battle that I had with obedience earlier this year. So Abby and I went to Vegas. I gambled for the first time. I used $20 to make around $180 in slots, and I was like, I'm going home with this money. This is it. I'm done. Blah blah blah. It was time for us to like eat and stuff like that, and I just had the cash there, so I started spending it. Right. So I spent a little bit on some food and snacks and coffee for us. And I had this $100 bill that I was like, you know what? This is going home to Georgia with me. Like, I'm bringing this home as like proof of me conquering Vegas in some fashion. I fly from Vegas to Florida for Callan and Bradley's wedding. Shout out to Callan and Bradley. We finished the wedding there, and I'm meant to be flying back from Florida to Georgia, and it's going to be mission complete, no more travels for a good couple months, things like that. And I missed my flight for the first time I've ever missed a flight. I technically didn't miss the flight, but I couldn't check in my bag because it was too late, and so I had to miss the flight. I ended up having to book a different flight. I ended up having to sit at the airport for a while, and turns out the flight that I was going to be on, that I had to rebook on, had some issues, and I wasn't gonna be able to make it to Georgia for another 4 or 5 hours later than I expected. And so no one likes this, right? I'm not in a good mood, but I'm in my head, I'm like, all right, this is just an opportunity for me to relax. This is the last hurdle to get home and not travel for months. Let's just lock in and do what we have to do to get home safely. And so I sit at the airport, laptop out, hanging out, and I try to get help from some of the Delta employees in regards to like getting put on a wait list for another flight while keeping my spot on my current flight. And the lady that was helping me just wasn't being very helpful. And there was 3 people at the desk and 1 line, and you just basically went to whoever was open at the time when you get there. And so I ended up being in line, and she being available and calling me over. She couldn't really help me. I left. An hour or so later, situation changed with the flights. I had to get in line again. It's her again, and she can't help me. And then this one last time, like hour 3 later, I go back in line, and this time it's a gentleman, super nice guy, apparently knew my situation already because he had heard me talking to his colleague a couple times and was able to help me. And I just felt so blessed and so happy that someone was looking out for me in that situation. And I felt, wow, like God really did his thing, letting me get a chance to talk to Keith. As I was leaving, the Spirit of the Lord told me that $100 is not going to Georgia, it's going to Keith. And I was like, wow, like I don't like this is what do you mean? Like, what do you mean? What do you mean? You know? And so I kind of like was struggling with it. I was like, is this just me feeling kind of giddy about getting the help that I needed, or is this truly the Lord telling me that I need to give Keith $100? A part of me was like, all right, well, I'm gonna get the money out of the envelope in my backpack and have it in my pocket just in case, right? And like, if something goes wrong or I don't see Keith again, then like that's that. But like, if I do see him, I'm gonna give it to him. At this point, I don't know that I'm actually like struggling with the spirit of disobedience. I can't think of many situations where I'll have a strong inclination, a strong feeling to do something that's good that is not necessarily in line with my plans. I'm in line getting ready to scan my little boarding pass and get on the flight now. My situation's changed. I ended up staying only 3 hours at the airport rather than 5. I'm in a better mood, and the guy scanning people to let him on the plane, telling them to have a good flight, is Keith. So I said, Lord, this is you. I'm gonna do it. And I got there, scanned my thing, and I said, hey Keith, thank you so much for helping me. This is for you. And he's like, oh, so you don't have to do that. I was like, no, like, please, this is for you. Take it. And he took it, and I left, and I felt this huge weight lift off my shoulders. I felt like I could fly to Atlanta on my own. No plane needed. It felt amazing. And when I sat down in my seat, a little while later, I was just thinking about it, and I realized what had happened. That I had just overcome the spirit of disobedience. I had committed an act of generosity, and the only thing that could have possibly made this better was for me to say, hey, God bless you, like, this is for you, God, like relating it to God in some way, rather than just being nice, thank you so much for helping me, that kind of thing. That was a learning moment for me, but that's an example of me stepping out of my comfort zone and being generous beyond like the usual tipping and stuff like that. Another way that Abby and I like to be generous is in regards to things around the house. So I like to declutter often. I like to clean things, maintain things that belong to us, and if the right opportunity shows itself, I'll actually give it to someone, give things to someone. Gift giving is my thing, especially like intentional gifts. So occasionally when it comes to just furniture or appliances, devices around the house, I like to give them out. And so Abby and I tend to go to our local Goodwill, and we give on a regular basis. Somehow, some way, we always end up losing the tickets, so we can't actually like use it for tax purposes. But that's something to keep in mind if you're gonna be doing that, to try to keep the tickets and keep track of that. All right, so one thing I want to do is also tie this into the scripture. Proverbs 19 verse 17 tells us, when you're gracious to the poor, you're lending to the Lord, and the Lord will always repay you. That's kind of what you get when you're in church, right? You're 10% giving directly to the Lord and trusting the Lord with your finances. But in regards to just generosity and just everyday giving, those situations are you lending to the Lord, and He's always going to pay you back with interest. So just keep that in mind. It has more to do with just the posture of your heart, being a child of God, and being willing to give your last dollar. This is something that I owe to my parents, right? I owe it to them. They're very gracious people. They're always inviting someone over and blessing them in some way or another. Another thing I want to kind of bring to mind is the fact that when you're reading online or watching documentaries about some of the richest people in the world, they give generous donations to different foundations and things like that. And of course, there's some of that is just kind of like moving money around and writing off taxes and stuff like that. But a lot of it has to do with the posture of their heart, being in a position of where they can help others and actually taking advantage of that. No matter where you are in life, if you're willing and you have the inclination to give, the Lord's always going to be looking out for you and giving you situations to give back. There's a scripture I want to share with you, and it's very important to the topic. It's Luke 16, and it talks about being trusted with little. The scripture says when the Lord can trust you with little, right? Whoever can be trusted with little can be trusted with much. And whoever is dishonest with little will be dishonest with much. And so if the Lord can trust you with the funds that you have now, the measly funds that you have now, to give 10%, to be generous and make an impact in your community and the people around you, He's definitely going to trust you with more. So that's something to keep in mind in regards to having the posture of your heart to be generous when the time comes. All right, so now we're going to talk about money management. The fastest way to lose money is to spend it. That's the biggest thing. A lot of people think I would have more money if I made more money, and that's usually not the case. You have to trim the fat and minimize your discretionary expenses to identify what those mandatory, like needed expenses, those needs that you have are, like your bills and whatnot to maintain your lifestyle, and then those discretionary expenses that are like your subscriptions or guilty pleasures and things like that. If you cut them out, those added funds are gonna give you the capability to do a lot more with your money, whether it's save more for a certain goal that you have, whether it's to be generous and to give to others and make an impact in their life, whether it's to invest and gain more in return, right? Whatever your goal is, maintaining a very small amount of discretionary spending and pooling your funds together is step one. Just seeing what you're working with. For me, it was when I was trying to buy my first house and I had to look at my finances and look at my income compared to my expenses, but then look at my nice to haves, right? Like the Netflix or the gym memberships and dining out expenses, things like that. Those things can make or break your finances, because if you live to date, right, you and your wife enjoy those, lavish dates or those travels and things like that, and you're not actually keeping track of, where that puts your finances, that's a big thing. If you have kids and you can't say no every single time you go to the store, that's a lesson that you need to learn, and for them as well. Because in reality, every Target run that you go on and your kid sees something in the aisle and asks for something, just because you have the funds to actually get it and you're trying to give your kid a better life than you had, doesn't mean you should always say yes to like buying a snack or buying a scarf or buying a toy or a book or whatever it is. Sometimes your child might need to learn that the Target run or the store run that you're at needs to be disciplined and stick to the list and stick to the plan for those things that you're going to go get. Not just to go get those things and get whatever else you see that's flashy. Otherwise, you're building this kind of susceptibility to marketing, right? Like anything that's flashy, anything that catches their attention is going to be anything that they want. And they're just going to have this mindset of, oh, that's nice. I like it. It makes sense. Let's do it. Mom can pay for it. Dad can pay for it. Like, it makes sense. And then even when they have their money, I have the money, I can do it, fine, I'll buy it. Rather than like really considering what expenses come with this down the line. Here's an example, okay? So you live in a neighborhood, whether it's an apartment complex or a house or a neighborhood, whatever. You live somewhere and you are looking to be more active, get out more, and just hit some fitness goal. And so to do that, you're buying or considering buying some equipment, whether it's like a Peloton or a stair stepper or some gym clothes, something like that, right? To look good and feel good and motivate yourself to actually go to the gym. You don't want to be the person who buys a treadmill and never uses it, or uses it once or twice. Like, not for like society to look at you as that person, but for yourself to look at you as that person, right? You bought a treadmill, you're not using it. You bought a Peloton and you're not using it. Or you bought a Peloton and now you have to like pay for a subscription associated with the Peloton. That's a financial investment that you've made, right? When you could just go outside and run for free. You could go outside and walk for free. I know, I understand that, like, it's not the same because you could be in the comfort of your home, air conditioning, watching a show and following a course and this, that, and a third. But, like, that's something you need to think about because it's a nice to have. It's not a mandatory thing to be fit. People have been fit without having the best gym gear, the best gym clothes, and the best gym equipment. Could be that you just need to get two dumbbells. Two dumbbells can do a lot for you in regards to fitness, right? A lot of different kinds of workouts can be done with 2 dumbbells, even just 1 dumbbell for $20, depending on the size. I think they charge different for the weight that you want. And so that's something to keep in mind. And then your debt management is the second thing that's the most important. I think a lot of people struggle with credit card debt. If you're someone who's struggling with debt and you're looking for ways to break free, I would consider using the debt roll-up method. And that's just kind of listing down all your debt, identifying all the interest rates, identifying what minimum payments look like for all of them, and then focusing on the smallest debt and putting every amount of cash, liquid cash you have right now to eliminating that smallest debt that you have, and then all the funds that you would technically be using as discretionary and using as that minimum payment for that debt that you just wiped out for the next smallest, and then using that once you've wiped that one for the next one, and just kind of snowballing it and rolling it. Some people like to take this step further by identifying which of all debt is the highest interest, and they try to tackle that first, because over time that debt is going to increase, and so they want to tackle the one with the most interest first. And these credit card companies are going to hide your interest rate from you. You have to be really savvy with either calling them, looking at your monthly statements, or identifying what that interest rate looks like. The last concept I want to talk about is investing. I've also shared an episode in the past in regards to investing in your relationship with the Lord and how that would grow you financially, and that is true. But on top of that, there are opportunities to invest, and I don't mean just like Forex or like stock or Bitcoin and stuff like that. Like, I'm talking about less volatile investments that are for people who are just starting out. Like, you're not like an investment guru. This is your first time investing. You're not investing thousands of dollars regularly. You want to be comfortable and you want to invest without having heartburn or fear. You should look into funds. You should look into different kinds of CDs, different kinds of high interest savings, things like that, where you can have access to your cash if you need it for an emergency, but while you don't need it, it's earning interest and gaining interest for you rather than against you. Some people like to invest in real estate. That's a little more challenging these days with high interest rates and things like that. And so I wouldn't necessarily recommend that for someone who's looking to make their first investment. But if you are someone who is on that level, you have multiple different kinds of investment in your portfolio and you're looking to venture into real estate, feel free to reach out to me and I'll share a little bit about what I've done in the past, what I'm currently doing, and where I think the market is trending. I want to take a step back and talk about some of the nice to haves a little bit more. So let's talk about cars, because that's like the number one thing that slips under the radar and tends to put people in a chokehold. Okay, people have nice cars because they like nice cars and they like the car that they have and they want to drive the car for its performance, its looks, you name it, different reasons, its size, for the family, whatever, maybe sentimental value, things like that. But one thing I want to keep in mind is that the car payment associated with the car can definitely cripple your finances if you're living within or maybe outside of your means or right there on the edge. So that's something to keep in mind. From time to time, I've considered just selling my car and buying a used vehicle in full cash for around $5,000 to $6,000, maybe. If it's going to be like a large SUV, I would go on the high end of maybe $10,000 in cash and having that and not spending $500 a month. over the course of a year, that $500 a month is $6,000. In 2 years, you've made that $10,000 investment back, right? If you're saving that $500 in car payments. And that car, if you made a good investment and you bought a good sound car, it should serve you for 4 to 5 years, even longer, right? Like 4 to 6 years. And so that's something to keep in mind. If that $500 in discretionary funds extra per month is going to let you qualify for the kind of mortgage that you're looking for the kind of house that you need. It's going to help you have the finances you need to invest in a different kind of investment, maybe in a fund or a 401k or a CD or a high yield savings that is going to give you more in your investment. So instead of in 2 years that $12,000, you're looking at $24,000. You never know. And so that's something, a decision like that that's so small can really change your position and your finances. Because if you want to buy a house, people talk about their 5-year plan when they're dating all the time. If you want to buy a house, or you want to hit some sort of financial goal in 5 years, you want to be married, pay for your wedding, and settle down in a home and start building a family, you don't start when you've met the person, right? Hopefully you're starting prior to your first day. You're starting on yourself. You're starting with your relationship with God. You're starting with your finances. You're starting with all the things that you're doing on a day-to-day. So that's something to keep in mind. Because having a G-Wagon is nice, because that's Abby's goal, Abby's bucket list. Having a G-Wagon is nice. Having a really nice car is nice. It's also very expensive, and that expense might cost you some financial freedom in the future. So that's something to keep in mind. All right, well, I hope you were able to get some value from today's video in regards to finances and money management. Just as a quick reminder, obviously it goes without saying for you to tithe to your church, whatever church you belong to, whether it's online or in person. Secondly, it's important to be generous. It's a posture of your heart more than being related to the value of the items that you're giving. And then managing debt is very important as well. Just making sure that even if you do have debt, that you're paying more than just the minimum payment, or you're using a strategy like the debt roll-up to make sure that you're not letting your debt actually snowball. And last but not least, that you're investing, that you're using your money to make more money for yourself in the future. Those are the main concepts that I hope you're able to take away from this video and use to your benefit to change and improve your financial life. Thanks for taking the time to hang out with me and listen. Feel free to share any kinds of feedback you'd like to share. Feel free to reach out to me in regards to any of my investments or kind of mistakes that I've made in the past, and I'm happy to share.